I'm back. So now we're going to talk about the protozoan diseases of the cardiovascular lymphatic system. And we're going to talk about Chagas, malaria, leishmaniasis, and toxoplasmosis. So let's start with Chagas. Chagas is common in my country. It's common in Brazil. It's common in tropical countries. So what happens here is the Trypanosoma cruzi, or cruzi, which is a flagellated protozoan. Remember, it moves through flagellum. I'm going to show you a picture in a minute. They have like a little ribbon type of shape. Is transmitted by this bug that is informally called kissing bug. So usually the person is sleeping and the kissing bug comes and kisses people on the face. That's why it's called kissing bug. Close to the mouth, close to the, cheeks. They like the CO2 that we exhale. That's why they like this area. Okay? As the mosquito is biting you, it defecates, and that feces contaminated with the protozoan gets into your skin, to your blood. Okay? Transmission can also happen through blood transfusion, mother to fetus, organ transplant, and contaminated food with feces of the bug. Okay, so it's not just through the mosquito. These mosquitoes, let me show you something, hold on, before I show you that. So the name of the disease comes from the scientist that discovered it, which was Brazilian. His name was Carlos Chagas, and that's the name of the disease, Chagas, right? And that was in 1909. There are around 8 million people in Central and South America contaminated with Trypanosoma cruzi. And if you don't treat this infection, it causes a lifelong disease, which is chronic and life-threatening. Okay, so the progression of the disease is really bad, and people can get very compromising symptoms that we're going to talk about. So this is what I was going to show you. You see how the kissing bug is on a piece of wood? They love wood. So in poor areas where you have a lot of houses made of wood, exposed wood, that is not treated, that is not silated, that doesn't have any type of lacquer on top, the kissing bug loves to be in those areas. And like little hiding places that you cannot see that they're there, and that's where they usually grow. This is the trypanosome. Okay, so you see how it looks like a little ribbon? And that's the flagellum. This is one typical sign, which is called Ramanna sign, where the bug kisses you, you don't see, and you itch the air, and then you itch your eye, and they infect the eye and cause this swelling of the eyelid. That's very common to see. So in the beginning, the symptoms are super mild and very general, like fever, fatigue, body aches, headache, rash, loss of appetite, diarrhea, and vomiting, which is, you can find in other infection. But as the disease becomes chronic, which usually happens in between 20 and 30% of the infected people, then you have two big signs, which are megaesophagus and megacolon. What are these? You have an impairment of the peristalsis of your esophagus and your digestive system, and that enlarges the esophagus and the colon, the intestine. Okay, so there are very important digestive issues here. Another type of complication is cardiac. So because they also infect the heart, you can have enlarged heart failure, altered heart rate or rhythm, and cardiac arrest, which can cause the sudden death, right? So the gastrointestinal complications, as I said, can lead to difficulties in eating, digesting, defecating. So that is important in this disease. There's no vaccine available. It's prevented by mosquito repellent. Travelers should observe food and beverage precautions and avoid consuming salad, uncooked vegetables, unpeeled fruits, and unpasteurized fruit juices. Okay. Now we're going to talk about toxoplasmosis. Toxoplasmosis is usually an asymptomatic disease caused by Toxoplasma gondii, and it's the leading cause of death from foodborne illnesses in the US. So what happens here is that the cat can transmit the disease to us, right? So, like I said, most of the people don't have symptoms. And when the symptoms they show are usually mild, such as headache, fever, swollen lymph nodes, and muscle pain. Okay? So like I said, because it's foodborne, it still can compromise patients that have a weak immune system, are either too young or too old. Okay? Like people that have undergone therapy, that have HIV, they can have these severe symptoms. Okay? And then, other than the symptoms that we talked about, which are here, they can also have more complications, such as encephalitis that leads to brain confusion, right, because they infect the brain, seizure, and coma. They can also infect the lungs, causing difficulty breathing. There is also associated blurry vision, problems in the eyes, eye pain, due to what is called ocular toxoplasmosis. This usually happens in congenital infection. So what is the congenital infection? Mom got the toxoplasma and it transmits it to the fetus, and that can cause stillbirth and neurological damage. In the US, it's estimated that 11% of the population 6 years or older have been infected with toxoplasma. It's a lot, right? 11%. In various places throughout the world, it's been shown that more than 60% of some populations have been infected. Okay? Usually high in areas of the world that have hot, humid climates, lower altitudes, because the oocysts survive better in these environments. Not passed person to person, only mother to fetus. So what's the cycle of this disease? It starts here. You have a cyst. Remember, we're going to remind you of something here. We're talking about protozoa, right? Protozoa like blood. Protozoa, when they're not in the blood, when they're in the environment, they're going to form a cyst. And the cyst has a thick capsule, right? And that thick capsule helps them to survive in the environment. So that's what you find in the environment. This cyst can mature into a what they call mature oocyst, and that can infect hosts such as mice, domestic animals, humans, through ingestion. I want you to appreciate here the picture of this lady with a big belly because she's pregnant, dealing with the litter box of her cat. So how is she gonna get it? She forgets to wash her hands afterward, and cat feces get on her hand, get on her food, get on her mouth. That's how she can get, and that can cause serious issues in the fetus. Not to her necessarily, but to the fetus. Okay? So another way to get it, if you say, well, I never had a cat, and I heard of somebody that never had a cat and got toxoplasmosis, you can get through eating raw meat or raw milk. Okay, cattle. Okay, so usually this meat is going to have the cyst, and once the cyst you ingest the cyst is going to transform into a vegetative form, or the trophozoite, right? So now the cyst here is transformed into tachyzoites, bradyzoites, which are trophozoites. which are, remember, the feeding form, right? Feeding or active form of the protozoa. And the feeding form can go back and infect the the cat. And you're like, but why the cat? The thing is, the cat is the only animal where the protozoa can have a sexual reproduction. You're like, what? Protozoa are not a single cell? Why is that so important that they have a sexual reproduction? You see, sporogony is like where they form the gametes, right? How do they form these gametes? Remember that, so let's say this is a protozoa and this is another protozoa, right? Two little cells here. They have what is called micronuclei, which are little tiny nuclei that they exchange with each other to mix genetic material. Why is that important? The more they mix genetic material, the more resistant and flexible they are to survive and to thrive, right? The more diversity a species has, the more prone to survive in different environments. So sexual reproduction in the cat is essential. That's why cat is the definitive host for production of these immature oocytes that will infect us and other animals. So without the cat, the cycle would be broken. Okay? Hope that's clear. Malaria. That's another protozoal disease. Malaria is caused by Plasmodium, which is the protozoa, and the Plasmodium is transmitted by a mosquito called Anopheles. Anopheles is a mosquito that is very common to be seen in endemic areas, and it makes the transmission wide. Okay? There are 4 different species, being the vivax, the mildest form, and the falciparum, the more deadly one. Okay? So usually in the case of the falciparum, as they infect the blood, you can have severe anemia. If they block capillaries, they affect the kidneys, liver, and brain. If left untreated, malaria can develop severe complications and lead to death. Okay? In 2018, it was estimated that 228 million cases of malaria occur worldwide. 228 million cases. And 405,000 people died, mostly children, in the African region. Temperature is critical, so they like warm environments. Temperature below 20 degrees is usually where one of the species, the Plasmodium falciparum, cannot complete the growth cycle. So then they don't survive. So that's why they are common in tropical areas. And transmission other than through the mosquito can be congenital and by transfusion. So the life cycle of the Plasmodium vivax, which is one of the species that causes malaria, is here. So what happens is that, let's see where we're gonna start. I wanna start with the mosquito here. See, the mosquito biting a person. After that initial bite, the Plasmodium goes to the blood, and in the bloodstream, it starts its asexual reproduction. Okay, so we are the intermediate host because it's where they have asexual, non-sexual reproduction. So what do? Just mitosis, right? They just keep multiplying. They can actually do another type of reproduction that is called schizogony, which is like one cell makes multiple cells. Now one makes 2. They split into multiple baby cells. Okay, so they grow really quick in the blood. So then you have in the blood the ring stage. What's the ring stage? If you look inside the red blood cell, I'm going to show you a picture. There is like a little ring. So that's the red blood cell. And then you see these little rings inside the blood cell. And as those little rings start to grow, they burst the red blood cell and they get out of it. there is something about this that is related to the symptoms. Every time that these merozoites, you guys don't need to know these names, okay? But every time the merozoites exit from a red blood cell, so this is my red blood cell, they release chemicals, or let's call them toxins, right? Toxins that will induce the production of cytokines in the body and cause symptoms, peaks of fever, chills, weakness. And as the merozoites start to get back into other red blood cells, infect other cells, the symptoms disappear. So every 2 days you have peaks of symptoms and then they go away. And in 2 more days another peak and then they go away. And this is because of this cycle, okay? Because of how long it takes for them to infect a red blood cell, grow inside that cell and burst it and be released again. So every time they're released, they're releasing these toxins that cause the symptoms, okay? That's important. And then, other than in the blood, they can also cause disease in the liver, right? So they grow inside the liver cells also. And will cause symptoms related to that too, that we're going to talk in a minute. So, then another mosquito comes and bites you. You are infected with the plasmodium, so they get the plasmodium, right? So they get here, this is the plasmodium. The plasmodium now in the body of the mosquito can have sexual reproduction, right? That's the only place they can do sexual reproduction. So the mosquito is the definitive host. You understand why without the mosquito there is no malaria? And one way to control the malaria is controlling the mosquito. So we're going to talk about this next, okay? So then the sporozoites, it's just another name, is one form of the protozoa that is in the salivary gland of the mosquito. It gets out when they bite you again. So they keep biting more people and infecting more people. That's just showing you the ring form inside the red blood cell. Okay, and that's another image showing the same thing, the merozoite inside the red blood cell. There are 2 forms in the red blood cell. The ring form that turns into a merozoite, which is like round but not ring looking. And that's the one that multiplies and bursts and gets out of the cell, right? That's important for diagnosis purposes. All right, that's the Anopheles. Look at that. With a little blood drop having a meal. And then, I guess that's what it is. So these are water pools where mosquito larvae thrive. So you see these pictures? You see how much still water you can have in some regions? And if this is warm enough, that's where the Anopheles is going to be. So how do you prevent the Anopheles? How do you control the larva for that mosquito so you can stop malaria, because then the parasite doesn't have a place to live? Insecticide treated nets, treatment of malaria in pregnant women, treatment of malaria in infancy with anti-malarial drugs, and indoor residual spraying. What is that? It's a spraying that they do inside the house that keeps a residue so the mosquito doesn't come back, because the house still has that chemical present, okay? And eliminate the pool of water due to rainfalls, okay? Also use larvicide in the water. That's another way to do it, to prevent it, okay? So the residual spraying is like for several months the insecticide will be present in the surface of those walls in the houses, and that's going to avoid or prevent the mosquito from being in that house. difficulties in getting rid of malaria. So it's difficult to contain this disease because it's difficult to develop a vaccine. They mutate rapidly, so that makes it very challenging to create a vaccine that will be effective when the next mutant form is already circulating, right? And because it's difficult to diagnose and you need more sophisticated equipment in areas that you don't have, like in undeveloped countries where you don't have enough resources, it would be hard to have enough testing and detect who is sick so you can prevent the disease from transmitting to other mosquitoes and to other people, right? This is just a graph showing you how, when people get into an area, you can have peaks of that disease and why the peaks happen. So usually it involves migration, right? All right, leishmaniasis. This is the last disease that we're seeing in this chapter for protozoa, and then we have one more helminthic disease and we're done, almost done. Leishmaniasis is transmitted, so leishmania is the name of the parasite. It's transmitted, there's different species, I'm not even going to talk about the species here, but they can be slightly different. It's transmitted via sandflies. These sandflies, which is right here, they have a blood meal, and that blood in their stomach is where the protozoan develops, right? So more than 90 species of this fly that can bite you and then can bite other animals, and then other animals can also transmit to a new person, and so on. So rodents, dogs, foxes are animals that can transmit through the sandfly the leishmania to you or to people. Hopefully not to you. Other uncommon ways of transmission are transfusion, needles, mother to baby, just like we talked about malaria, right? So they usually proliferate in phagocytic cells, and they're transmitted through the saliva of the mosquito, like I said, like with the malaria. This is how the promastigotes look like. The promastigote is the form that is not inside a macrophage, okay? The ones in the macrophage are called amastigotes. So the promastigote is the one that is infected, that is going to be transmitted through the saliva. And you see they also have flagella, and each one of the cells is one little protozoan, one little parasite. Oops. Ah, guys, this is sad. Look at that. So there are three forms of this disease: the cutaneous, the visceral, and the mucocutaneous. The visceral is when the parasite invades the internal organs, and you usually have less than 100,000 cases per year. So it's not as common as the cutaneous. The cutaneous is the most common. But in this case, what you usually see, what are the visceral leishmaniasis symptoms? You have enlargement of spleen, liver, night sweats, severe temperature, bleeding, blackening of the skin, scaly skin, dark ashen skin, cough, weakness, and weight loss. For the cutaneous, it's very common to see this very bad rash, which is a papule that ulcerates and leave a scar. Okay, so that's the cutaneous. Between 700,000 to 1.2 million or more cases per year. Okay. And then you have the mucocutaneous, which is more rare, and it's a consequence of the cutaneous infection. It's common in Latin America. So certain types of the parasite may spread from the skin to mucous membranes and then cause sores in nose, throat, mouth, and it lacerates the face, just like it looks like in this picture. Okay? So this is more rare, but it can happen depending on the species. Okay, now let's talk about the helminthic disease. So we're all done with our chapter. So the only helminthic disease that we talk about is schistosomiasis. So the schistosoma is a fluke. What is a fluke? A fluke is a trematode. So I'm gonna write here. Trematode. A trematode is one type of platyhelminth. So remember, flattened body, they have oral suction, so these little suckers that help them attach to the host. So now we are talking about worms, just to make sure we're clear. So worms, which are helminths, right? So three main types of schistosoma. So there are three different species. Hosts can be different animals: cattle, dog, cats, rodent, pigs, horses, goats, right? And you don't need to know which species is in which one, but just so you know, there are three different types. Symptoms are not caused by the worms themselves, by the body reaction to the eggs. So this is an egg that makes a granuloma, and all this is a granuloma, which is very important inflammatory. So a granuloma is a very important inflammatory reaction to the egg. Okay. So symptoms and signs include fever, cough, abdominal pain, diarrhea, hepatosplenomegaly. What's this? Enlarged liver and spleen. And eosinophilia. What is that? Missing, you lack, you don't have enough eosinophils in the blood. They can cause a local cutaneous hypersensitivity reaction because of when okay, I didn't tell you about this. The way that they penetrate your skin. So I'm going to show you the cycle so you understand how you can get schistosomiasis and how they transmit. This is the egg. You see how the egg has a little spine? So remember, when we're going to talk in the next chapter more about helminths. Each helminth egg, each different species or genus of helminth has a very typical egg that is very important in the diagnosis. One more point I want to make here. Why are we talking about these helminthic diseases when we're studying microbiology? Because the egg, you see, this is a microscopy. This is another microscopy. The eggs are microscopic, and the larvae most of the time also. That's why we talk about them in microbiology, because egg and larva microscopic, even though the worm is not, is visible with the naked eye, right? These granulomas that I told you about, they can form in various places, including muscle, brain, spinal cord, liver, spleen, which causes the symptoms, right? And cause tissue fibrosis. And also, they can affect the blood, right? Many other diseases, I'm not even mentioning all of them to you. And general manifestations can include fever, cough, abdominal pain, diarrhea. I told you about this already. Okay, perfect. Sorry for repeating. Let's go to the next one. So this is the cycle. This is the last thing I'm showing you. So we're almost done. So the cycle for schistosomiasis is, we start here. The fluke lays eggs. This is the male, and the female lives inside the body of the male. The male has a slit, and that's what schistosoma means. Schistosoma means split body. Okay. As they lay their eggs, these are the eggs shed through the feces or urine into the environment. These eggs are very resistant, so they can be in the water and survive until they hatch and be resistant until it's time to hatch. and when they hatch, you have the mycelium. The mycelium is like a baby, the larva, right? The mycelium penetrates a snail. Look at that. You need to have a specific species of snail for this cycle to be possible. Okay? So the mycelium grows in and reproduces in the snail. And then in the snail, you have a release of another form that is called cercaria. Cercaria are free swimming. You see how they have like little flippers or something like that? And as they swim, they can penetrate the skin of a man, of a human, that is with the feet in the water, with the body in the water. That's how we get it. They penetrate the skin, and from the skin they go to the blood, and from the blood they move all over the body, and then they can circulate to the lungs, and then to the heart, and then so they're just following your circulation, right? They go to the lungs through the skin, blood, lungs, and then heart, and then they go to the liver, and in the exit of the portal vein from your liver, remember that? The portal vein that brings the blood from the other digestive organs. From there, that's where they mature. So the little larva matures in the hepatic portal vein, and from there is where that's where they live and they become adults. Okay? From there they can also move to mesenteric venules. In the mesenteric venules is where the worms copulate. Okay, the copulation happens there. Where are the mesenteric venules? Little blood vessels that are connected to your intestine. That's what that is. Okay? And then they deposit the eggs in these little venules close to the intestines. That's how you shed them in the feces. Okay? Sad story. Okay, guys. They can also go through the blood to your kidney and be eliminated in the urine, like I said before. We're done with this chapter. I know it was heavy and hard, so make use of your tables, fill them up, make sure they're clear, color-coded, all the information you need for the exams, and I think you're gonna do well, okay? It's more a matter of organizing all this information so you have it clear to be used in the exams. Bye-bye. See you for the next chapter.